Well, welcome everyone. My name is Marc-André Pigeon. I'm the director for the Canadian Centre for the Study of Co-operatives, and it's my great pleasure to be here today with Pam Groat. Pam is the vice chair of Bridge City Bicycle Co-op, a co-op in Saskatoon, Saskatchewan. So Pam, tell us a bit about Bridge City Bicycle, what you do, and then also how you got involved in this organization and your experience with cooperatives.
For sure. Okay, so yeah, the Bridge City Bicycle Co-op is a volunteer-run, mostly, bike shop where people can come and get used bicycle parts, or ready-to-ride bicycles, usually at pay what you can. Unless you are a kid, then you can actually get these for free, one bike per year. And membership is $20 or 2 hours of volunteering. Everybody is encouraged to fix their own bikes, and so the volunteers we have on hand are just there to provide hands-off training as much as possible. And we get a lot of our bikes just through donations and also through our bike diversion project, which takes any bikes that have been brought to the landfill and goes through any usable parts and bikes from there. We also have a few other programs working with students in particular, and like having youth build a bike workshops, that sort of thing. So we so we're trying to get as many kids out on the road with bikes as possible, and getting them involved in how to build them as well. It's really just about empowering people in fixing something themselves, as well as creating this sustainable and reliable form of transportation.
Fantastic. And so how did you get involved, Pam? What's your kind of story in this process?
So I've always liked biking, and my husband and I moved to Saskatoon in 2015. So he's actually been involved with the bike route in Calgary, which is another bike shop that's run by students, the University of Calgary. So yeah, he was already familiar with the model of these like volunteer-run bike shops. So this is where we would go to get our bikes fixed, or to fix our bikes, and Brennan would also volunteer, my husband. I think in 2017, we were actually both approached by the co-chairs at the time as to whether we would want to be involved on the board. My husband was still full on in med school, so he wasn't ready to commit to that, but I did have time, and actually it was kind of really good timing for me because I was still looking for something a little bit more engaging, or something that could help me, like, get me to contribute to the community in a way. The work that I was doing, it was still technically like what my background is, but maybe not as vocational as I had hoped yet.
Okay, yeah. So a bicycle co-op, I mean, the way you described it, it sounds like a pretty hands-on kind of, operation, right? So you're actually in there fixing bikes, putting bikes together, showing people how to fix bikes, giving them tips and tricks. Yeah. How does that work in a COVID-19 world? What does that look like? Does it even work? And so just how are you adapting to this experience of COVID?
Yeah. So in other jurisdictions, the governments have actually deemed bike shops as essential services, or community bike shops in particular, but that distinction wasn't so clear for us. So we erred on the side of caution, especially because currently our bike shop is quite small. Like it's pretty hard to do any physical distancing. You can have a very minimal amount of people in there and still maintain that 2 meters of physical distance. So unfortunately, our shop is not open to the public right now. What we have been doing in the interim, and so our mandate is everybody has access to a bicycle. So we really just want to try to continue that mandate as much as possible while staying safe and keeping our members and volunteers engaged. So basically what that looks like right now for us is our operations manager has coordinated with certain volunteers who have the ability to fix bikes at their own home, and has been offering them bikes to fix, and so it just like it's a bit more of a slower exchange, but it allows people to work on bikes on their own time and help us have these ready to ride bikes available for the public sooner. Also, so I mentioned the bike diversion program, so that's at the landfill, and that space is entirely outside. We spoke with the landfill operations, and they were fine with us continuing our programs. So the only thing we've changed there, or I guess a couple things we've changed there, is that we only allow one person on site at a time now, just to ensure that there's as much physical distance as possible. And we've upped our sanitation game.
So that's where you would go to a dump. I would call it a dump,
Yeah.
where I'm from, and you would sort through the garbage, or how does that work exactly? And what does that look like now versus normally?
Yeah. So luckily, we've had an agreement with the City of Saskatoon landfill, I think, since 2016. And the way it works is we actually have a separate area specifically where if somebody were to come through to like the scales, and so what are you dropping off, and if they mention that they got a bike, the landfill attendants will direct them to our area. So it's a special area, and we don't scavenge at all, and that's not allowed at the landfill. We only look at what the pile of bikes that's been left for us. And so from that pile of bikes, sometimes they're like perfectly good condition, they just need some like air in their tires, and sometimes they're pretty far gone, but there's usually at least a few parts that we can salvage from them. And then anything we cannot, we take those parts and send them to the metal scraps. And so it still gets recycled, like regardless of what happens or whether it gets reused. But yeah, we're trying to bring back any useful parts of bikes.
And so some of your members are working on bikes at home, kind of getting them ready for use. Are people still reaching out to you and asking for bikes now, right? I mean, it seems like an activity that you could conceivably do with the physical distancing and all the rest. So is the demand still there, or is it tapered off, or what does it look like from your perspective?
So it is my understanding that there's still been a little bit of inquiries, but I mean, I think a lot of our inquiries have usually been in person. So obviously we have the signage and we've made the announcements that the shop isn't open to public right now. However, our operations manager has started to offer, has started to do online bike sales. So we've set up like our Squares purchasing site, and have started to take any of those ready to ride bikes and put them online for people to start purchasing. So yeah, I think that's how we're going to approach it, at least for now. We did, before this all happened, we had the intention of having a bike sale pretty soon here, like this weekend or next. And I don't know what it's going to look like instead, whether it'll just be like a slow, just pick up when you can online sale sort of thing instead, which I guess would be the safest, because yeah, you can ensure that there's just only a few people there at a time.
Part of the reason I asked this question is because I've heard stories on the news about bicycle shops, and their demand is apparently very strong. Like there's a lot of people that want to buy bikes. Understandably, I guess. So I was just kind of curious if you were catching any of that draft, to borrow a biking term, in your operations.
I don't think, yeah, I don't think that it's gone up, I would say, in demand. Like this is usually our busy time when people are in general looking for bikes. I am happy, and we do like to partner with bike shops. So we're happy that, like, while we're not able to meet that demand right now, that those local bike shops can. And also, like, yeah, I think that in general, I mean, our community, or our target, or the people that we've been serving pretty historically, have been like the core neighborhood, and it's often harder to actually like get in touch with our membership, or for the people who actually want bikes. So
Can you explain what the core neighborhood is for people who aren't from Saskatoon? What's the core neighborhood?
So the core neighborhood, where we are in particular, we're in Riversdale and like the far end of it, the west end, and it's generally there's a lot of low income housing. There are a lot of people from out of country. Yeah, I think it was in 2016 when there were many Syrian refugees that came to Saskatoon. That was a huge year for us. We had like so many people come and get bikes for their kids. So yeah, so often, yeah, the people that are looking for bikes at pay what you can prices or free for kids are typically the types who might not be so engaged online or might not have that reliable source of communication. So yeah, I think that like I've only passively been aware of the inquiries that we're seeing. I only passively monitor our inquiries. That's all through the operations manager. But from what I've seen, there hasn't been. I don't think that there's been an increase in demand. People understand, I guess. They understand our limitations, and they recognize like how we run.
It's a really interesting point about the kind of the challenges of reaching your audience, because my partner works at a core neighborhood school, elementary school, and they have challenges. Many of the parents don't have computers, or they have one computer and the parent needs it, and the schools are trying to help them. But that just occurs to me, that might be an interesting way for you to reach out to some people too, if you were able to partner with some of those schools to kind of get their kids out of their parents' hair a little bit. I think that's a big challenge for a lot of parents in those neighborhoods.
For sure.
In general.
Yeah. No, absolutely. I think that and I mentioned like the Build a Bike programs before, and we were trying to come up with a way to like somehow still provide these students with bikes, and it's like, well, how do we even reach out to them? And I mean, we have those partnerships with those schools, but it's still a matter of like those schools still need to contact those students somehow. So
yeah, for sure. What have you had any interactions like with policy? Where's your co-op kind of landed on that? I mean, there's wage subsidy programs. I understand you have one employee, correct?
Yes.
And have you taken advantage of those kind of programs, or have you had any other interactions with the policy space that might be interesting in the context of this crisis?
Yeah, I think we've applied for one grant, I think, where the intent behind it was if you've lost any major revenue due to COVID-19. And for us, I mean, obviously we're missing out on those open shop hours, and when people are donating what they can for what bikes and parts that they are getting. But we also just missed out on one of our biggest fundraisers, which was the bicycling shorts or cycling shorts silent auction and video premiere night. So yeah, it was, which is sad, and I don't know when we're going to be able to show all these videos, because we got actually a lot of local submissions this year, which would have been really cool to.
So tell me a bit about those the short auction, which I am
I'm
kind of imagining, but I have no real good fix on. And then this video. So tell us a bit about those.
So cycling shorts, it's typically done on our right around like the anniversary of when we became a co-op, which is in 2012. And the idea of it is basically for people to submit their short cycling or bike repair related videos, and then we showcase them. And in the meantime, there's beverages and a little bit of food. Last year we had a cake because it was our birthday. And there's a silent auction. Our operations manager does a really good job of getting donations from across the community. And so there's a lot of really great items to bid on. And So yeah, hopefully we can still like get get that sort of event going on later in the year. And yeah, like I said, this year we really pushed for people to submit things locally, because oftentimes we end up showcasing just a lot of clips that we've enjoyed from everywhere. But yeah, to get some local productions is pretty cool.
Have you been in touch, or you or your board been in touch with other bicycle co-ops, and in this crisis, kind of looking for best practices or ideas? You know, there's this principle, takes cooperation amongst cooperatives, and so have you leveraged that, or how have you leveraged your co-op structure, I guess, in general? If maybe starting with the particular, but if there's anything else that comes to mind, I'd be happy to hear it.
Yeah, I think that we've definitely, well, in particular, our operations manager has done a really good job of just seeing what else is out there and figuring out like what other people are doing and how we can potentially do something similar. Like I mentioned before, there's a lot of jurisdictions that have considered it an essential service, and so they are keeping business sort of as usual with some limitations. And we did keep that into consideration for ourselves, but it just didn't quite make sense in terms of like our capacity right now at the shop. We have used resources though, and there's a lot of really great like how-to videos and instructional manuals that a lot of co-ops are willing to share. So again, our operations manager has sent those out to the public since the crisis, just so while we're not able to teach people how to fix their bikes, maybe they can learn a bit on their own during this time. And yeah, I think that in general, that's kind of a lot of times how we progress with anything, is if we feel like there's some new initiative that we want to try, or if there's some sort of decision that we're needing to come to, one of the big things is that we always check is what other co-ops have done, what other bike shops have done. And there's a really great network of bike shops and lots of great sharing. So there's actually this conference, which I've never been to, that just sounds absolutely incredible, called Bike, and it's completely kind of thrown together in a really cool way. It's also pay what you can, and people are just sharing all of their incredible stories and methods of how they're making the shops and co-ops work.
So maybe I come back to something you said at the beginning, and the word has just not come to me, but you used a really nice word to describe why you got involved. It's something to do with almost a calling, I guess is a bit of a strong word, but yeah. Can you speak to that? How does this kind of co-op structure get to you emotionally or otherwise? Where does it land for you in your own sense of self and the world?
So, okay, the thing that comes to mind is my first kind of experience being part of a co-op, and that was when I was living in Australia, which was right before moving to Saskatoon. I was there for a year, and we happened to live on like the coolest street in Brisbane, basically, where there was one house on the top of the hill, just like a few houses away from ours, that it was an amazing community hub. It was actually, the backyard was a bike shop as well. The basement was a place for people to meet, to like for choir as well as for activism in general. And then every Wednesday was this food co-op. And it was a really cool model where they reached out to different producers that were local and generally had like organic practices, but didn't quite have that certification yet. So they weren't able to, you know, make a go of it with the markets. But yeah, so they would buy all this stuff in bulk, and you would get 2 hours on a Wednesday to like go and like pick up what you needed. And once a month, you had to volunteer those 2 hours and either ring people's orders in or that sort of thing. And the way that they minimized food waste was ensuring like, okay, so this is what you got this week. Are you planning to come back next week? Okay, we have a pretty good sense of what we need to purchase then. And it was just so incredible. It was so cool that like the entire community came together and like bought their groceries all at the same time, and we would learn about new food together. Like, this is a sapote, and like it's like an avocado but tastes like chocolate pudding, which is very cool.
I'll tell my kids about that.
Yeah. and so anyways, yeah, that, I mean, I basically was just at that moment, or like just recognizing that this was something that was possible, really drew me to like seek out co-ops once we moved to Saskatoon. That's why I'm part of the Steep Hill Food Co-op and Diversity Bike Co-op as well. Just again, really believing in active transportation. That's my mode generally. And I think it's, yeah, again, super empowering. I think that that's like the word that I've always associated with bike shops. And I think that like the big thing about co-ops that speaks to me is that it's membership driven, it's members driven, and if there's any profits, it's distributed evenly versus like this disproportionate profit that can occur in different structures, which is like the root of so many problems we're seeing right now. So yeah, I think there's a lot about it that's, yeah, it's just like, it just feels really wholesome and community driven and led, and being a part of something really can like make you, or makes me feel like I'm contributing, and it can create like purpose. Mm-hmm.
So it's kind of unfortunate that we couldn't be having this conversation live in the bike shop. You know,
yeah,
such a better setting for this kind of conversation,
totally.
especially in light of what you've just said, just kind of that visual representation of that community. But what about? Let me just kind of pick up on this theme. The idea that that the co-op could grow into something bigger, does that cross your mind? And what would you do and kind of help maybe seed or spin off other co-ops? You know, who knows, right? But what kind of, if you had a magic wand, what would you want for your Bridge City Bicycle Co-op, and where would you go next? What would the kind of big idea be?
Yeah,
You have a magic wand, so you can do what you want.
So I mean, the biggest thing with our co-op is that it was like, we have enough bikes, we have enough interest. We just do not have enough time. Yeah, there's more bikes than time, basically, for us to like fix all of them. And like that would be the thing, is that, and actually this is something that I've wanted to do, is just have like a mass, like fix it time, like just like a big fix it event where like we just like fix as many bikes as possible. Because even like I've done a lot of shifts at the landfill, and it's just heart-wrenching every time I look at a bike that's just like a little bit too far gone for us to like prioritize, just because we don't have capacity. So I think that would be the thing, is that like if we could somehow just like make that the priority. And also, yeah, I mean, another reason the bike co-op means a lot to me is like because it's repurposing things. I really try to reduce my waste in the world, and overconsumption is such a thing that, like, I mean, yeah, we have enough bikes to allow everyone to cycle in the city, but people continue to buy new ones. So it's just like, yeah, I think that would be the thing, is that like if I had a magic wand, I would fix all of the bikes, and then I would get people to like, yeah, prioritize that repair mentality.
What about a national holiday then? So a national holiday people have to devote to kind of repairing whatever. It could be bikes, but it could be other things, right?
No, I'd be down for that for sure.
Maybe I'll ask one last question, and that's an open-ended question. Do you have anything you would like to add to this conversation that I haven't brought up on my own?
I think also maybe I'll just elaborate a little bit more on like how our shop got to the place it's at right now. So we started off just as like a bike stand in what used to be the city center farmers market, and I mean, it was completely volunteer run, and this was before my time, but it was my understanding that it was a struggle sometimes on Saturdays to find somebody to open up a shop, and like it burnt out a lot of volunteers, it burnt out a lot of board members, and I think that that's like a common issue with a lot of these initiatives, is that it can create quite a bit of burnout. But once we kind of like found our niche, and a lot of that is supplying bikes to youth, we were able to find more grants. And with those grants, we've been able to actually afford an employee, like a consistent employee, and that's been like a major game changer for the cooperative, to have that stability and consistency, and just that assurance that every shift we're going to have somebody who's there and committed to it. And we're also not depending on people to, you know, take their spare time and volunteer hours to do it. It's like we're actually properly compensating this person to be a part of it. And that's, that means a lot to me, because I have some time to spare right now, but I can only commit so much to this, and I don't expect others to commit so much to this without having some sort of compensation.
Yeah, that seems like a really important point. That transition from you had this there was this general idea. I know you weren't there, so it's a bit hard to speak to, but there was this general idea that we want to do something around bicycles, but then it somehow got focused and kind of strategically. And so that's one of the big things that we talk a lot about in the center, is that kind of having that strategic focus and how important that is. It sounds like once you hit on that, we're going to primarily, not exclusively, but primarily serve young people. That really made it easier to kind of think effectively about how you could use your resources and get resources in this case.
Yeah, and it has really helped like us kind of guide how the board runs as well, because we'll get new board members and they'll provide ideas, and we're always considering something new, but we do have to kind of like keep that like historical context in mind, of like, maybe we have tried that already, and maybe things are different now, and maybe we can now, but it's just like this is something that's working for us, and until we feel like that's solid, like we should just continue to master it.
Right. Actually, Pam, it does bring to mind one other question, and I've had conversations with your colleague Stan about this. But what is the reaction from other bicycle shops, like the for-profit bicycle shops? How do you manage that? And does your focus on children create problems, or is that a good thing? Or how does that all play out in terms of your relationships there?
So yeah, our relationships with the bike shops are quite good. I think we both understand like our purpose within the community. We are typically serving a lot of community members that wouldn't even consider coming to a bike shop. So in a lot of ways, or just might not have the means to. So in a lot of ways, yeah, I think that we've kept our markets separate enough that we're able to collaborate together. And in fact, that cycling shorts event I was talking about was supposed to be at Bike Doctor's loft space. So, and even a lot of the items that would have been up for auction are donated from bike shops. So yeah, I think they recognize our purpose within the community, and they know that like I mean, again, we're not getting mechanics to fix people's bikes. Generally, we're getting mechanics or volunteer people who understand mechanics to teach another person how to fix their own bike. So it's like, yeah, we make sure we're never like we're not towing that line with selling mechanical services the way a bike shop would. And we really focused in more on the actual sharing of knowledge.
Right, and who can object to that? Pam, thank you so much for your time today. I really appreciate it. I look forward to hearing about how the Bridge City Bicycle Co-op evolves. Thank you again.